I will focus mostly on Manhattan today because it's generally the most interesting, and also because the other boroughs are mostly residential, which means that it's mostly where people live, and you won't find the skyscrapers and attractions that you find in Manhattan there. So the Upper East Side is traditionally known as a very wealthy area. Not, of course, everyone who lives there is rich. When it was first built, that's where all the wealthiest people in New York went. And for that reason, you can find a lot of very nice apartment buildings and also a lot of really nice museums. Because these people had all this money, they were able to invest it in the arts. So if you want to go to a museum, they've got the Metropolitan Museum of Art, also known as just the Met. And it's great, it would take you days to go through everything that they have there. And also, second probably biggest museum is the Museum of Modern Art, or MoMA it's called. So if you want to go to a really good museum, that's kind of the place to go. Other than that, there's not so much exciting stuff to do there because the Upper East Side is mostly, again, residential, as is the Upper West Side, where they live on How I Met Your Mother. And the Upper West Side is also residential, not known for being as wealthy, but the culture there is very nice. Both areas are pretty quiet compared to the rest of New York. In between them, Central Park, of course. And again, I have pictures of that to show you. Central Park is a really interesting place because for a park, as you can see, it's that whole area up there where it's green and blue. And it's actually a really large percentage of Manhattan. Manhattan's such a small place, and for one park to be so big, it must be pretty important. So Central Park is a great place to go. The only downside about it, in my opinion, is that it makes it really difficult to get from the west side to the east side because there's no subway going through. Just a couple more neighborhoods before we move on. So Little Italy, unfortunately, is actually getting smaller and smaller because Chinatown is getting bigger and bigger. Other than having Chinese food, Chinatown also has a lot of shopping. And it has not the best shopping, but it has really cheap shopping. You can get designer bags and designer sunglasses and things like that for a really, really small portion of the price because they have what's called knockoffs, which are fake versions. So because of that, a lot of people like to go to Chinatown and get these cheap imitations of designer brands because maybe they can't afford things on Fifth Avenue, which is also on the Upper East Side. Fifth Avenue is great for shopping. You won't find cheap stuff like you can in Chinatown, but you'll find all these brand name places like Prada, Gucci, Burberry, all these kind of things. So it's great for shopping. And then just maybe one more, and you wouldn't know what famous street is down there. Wall Street. So maybe you've heard in the news there's been a lot of protesting going on down there. But that's where the kind of financial center of New York is, where they trade stocks. They've got a famous bull that maybe you've seen a picture of. We talked a little bit before about how Central Park is different from the rest of Manhattan. Central Park is a great place to get away from all the kind of noise and crowdedness of the rest of the city. One of the things you can actually do there is take a boat out with your friends. The water is not the screen, it was just the picture, but it's really kind of nice. You can take a boat, you can have a picnic, people like to bicycle or just kind of walk around. There's also a lot of free concerts, sometimes classical music, sometimes artists like the Black Eyed Peas, I think last summer just had a sudden concert for free. So you can just kind of go and find something to do all the time there. They also have Shakespeare in the park during the summer, and that's a free production that they do different Shakespeare plays, often with very famous people. Al Pacino was in it last summer, and that's free, but people line up at 3 in the morning to get tickets. There's also a famous memorial here. Does anyone want to guess who this memorial is for? John Lennon, exactly, yeah. So if you can't see, that says Imagine. And this memorial is in Central Park. They named the area of Central Park Strawberry Fields. So they named that part of Central Park after John Lennon, who was living in New York when he was killed. The subway is the fastest way to get around New York. You can of course take yellow cabs, which you all have, I'm sure, seen. The subway is the fastest way, not always the cleanest way. But Times Square, which I'll show you next, is a really easy place to get to and from in the city. As you can see, all of those circles with numbers and letters represent different lines you can take to get around the city. And it's very easy to do that from Times Square. This is a picture of Times Square at night. As you can see, advertising is a really, really big part of New York. There are countless billboards that they light up at night and advertise for all different kinds of things, from Pepsi to SWAT. And there's a lot of shopping in Times Square as well. But even for stores that don't exist in Times Square, you will find these advertisements. Also in this picture, you can see behind us that in the streets over here, there are no cars. And you won't find that in New York in most places. But in Times Square, there are portions of the street where no cars are allowed to go. That makes it a lot easier to walk around Times Square. That being said, it's still very difficult because it's so crowded. If you want to meet a native New Yorker, don't go to Times Square, you will not meet any. Because people who live in New York generally do not like Times Square. Very few New Yorkers come to visit Times Square because there's so many tourists, it's so crowded, and it's extremely expensive. Mamma Mia, maybe you've heard of? Broadway, exactly. So Broadway is actually the name of a very large street, but it's where you can find many different musicals and plays, sometimes comedy shows and sometimes concerts as well. And of course you can see here many yellow cabs. Do not be fooled though, even though there are so many, it's very difficult to get one to stop for you. It's the Brooklyn Bridge. So the Brooklyn Bridge connects, of course, Brooklyn to Manhattan. And it's a really kind of great thing to do over the summer or when the weather is nice, because a lot of people like to walk over. You get really, really beautiful views of the city. There's also a bicycle lane, so it's very popular for people to walk over that way. And there's also a really fantastic pizza place on the Brooklyn end of it. There were people wait an hour just to get pizza because it's so good. This is Rockefeller Center. Before I talk about the tree, because the tree is not there most of the year, behind the tree, that building over there is 30 Rock, and it's the address in Rockefeller Center. It's where NBC Studios is located. And NBC Studios is a TV studio where they film a lot of shows that are popular in America. And if you go there, you can actually get a tour of the studio, which is pretty nice. You can also go, it's called Top of the Rock. You can go up and get a really great view of the city, one of the best views that you can get. And it's kind of nice just to go relax, and there's some shops in there as well. There's also, of course, this tree. They bring it every year for Christmas, and a lot of people like to come take photographs. And then this ice skating rink is also open for the winter, and you'll see that in a lot of movies. And it can be kind of nice to walk around. People also like to window shop in the area because there's some really nice stores, and they put up these really great decorations in the window for Christmas. And then the last picture, this is the World Trade Center Memorial. I did not take this picture because I have not been, but this is an aerial view of the World Trade Center Memorial. It was just opened just before I left New York to come here. And the World Trade Center Memorial, as you can see, there's these two squares. Each of these is where the two towers used to stand before they were destroyed. So it opened for the 10-year anniversary. You can't really tell from this picture, but on all the walls of that, there's these giant waterfalls. And also written on the walls are the names of all the people who died in the attacks. There's also right back there a museum. And again, I have not been there yet, but it's a really nice place to go if you... Most people, especially living in New York, if not just in America, lost at least 1 or 2 or 3 people that they knew in the attacks. So it's nice to go pay tribute to the people you know who died and to go to the museum. They also planted all these trees around because, as you may have noticed, Central Park is the largest green space in New York, but there are not many others. So it was kind of to make it a nice kind of peaceful area for people to come visit.